Speaking of communication, how do these non-human primates communicate with each other?
Oh,
besides the grunts.
Yeah, in multiple ways.
Multiple ways, yeah.
So they have vocalizations, and again, what's interesting for the baboons is, so I told you all about how different the societies are. But if you do the recordings and do fancy acoustic analysis, the calls are all the same. So you can tell the difference because the Chacma baboons are larger. So when a Chacma baboon grunts, it's like, and the Guinea baboon male is, So, you can tell the difference from the size. But if you control for size, basically all the variation disappears. The vocalizations mainly are really, the structure is extremely similar, and they would all understand each other. So you can do a playback, and you can play an alarm call of a Chacma baboon that lives, 6,000 kilometers away or 10,000 kilometers away, and they would understand each other. They would know this is an alarm call. Having said that, what differs is how often they use calls like this. So, for instance, the Chacma baboons being so competitive, they have calls to signal their stamina, to signal their fighting ability. So they use the loud bark, which is also the alarm call, and just call and call and call and call. And these calls vary with rank. So they give you a good indication of how fit a baboon is, what its resource holding potential is. And the Guinea baboon males don't do that. They don't need to display because they have a completely different strategy where they're nice to females and try to have a little, their females to themselves. So there's no displaying. Interestingly, there is also the roar grunt, which is sort of a very elaborate, and then they inhale and sort of pump themselves up, and they do both the Guinea and the Chacma baboon males do that, this roar grunt. Sounds more impressive than when I do it. Yeah. So it sounds really impressive. I mean, they're signaling size probably. And then the Chacma baboons would start wahooing, doing this display. And the Guinea baboon males are just silent, And initially I was always like, no, start wahooing, why? But they don't. So the structure of the signals is the same, but the usage differs. And then they have, of course, in addition to the acoustic communication, they have facial expressions. So the threat stare is very important. They have light eyelids. So although the faces are dark, the eyelids are light so that you can flash. So when they raise the eyebrows, which is what we also do, but we have sort of the subtle eyebrow rise is actually friendly. But if you really raise it, this is kind of a threat stare. And this is primate. This is why, we are primates. And in the Guinea baboon, or in the baboons generally, or also in the macaques, they all have this eyebrow rise, which is, if it's just rising, it's sort of a mild threat. But then if they also bob the head, then it becomes a more severe threat. And then they can add a vocalization, so they can sort of escalate the degree of threatening. Can combine signals, facial and acoustic. Then they have gestures, postures. These greeting rituals also combine postures, facial expressions, and vocalizations. Olfaction plays a minor role, I think. So they may sniff the genitals of the females to see whether she's receptive, but that's not so huge. So it's visual communication plays a huge role, and then acoustic communication.